we're considering is the impact of allowing the height to be increased from 28 feet to 35 feet, and the impact relative to compatibility with other existing development in the vicinity, and the ability for other properties to develop or redevelop. As noted in the staff report, the existing dwellings in the area vary in size, in height, and in scale. The proposed dwelling, if allowed to go up to the 35-foot height, will actually be lower than the adjacent house to the east, relatively speaking, as measuring from the above sea level elevation perspective, or as you would see it from the street. Allowing for the 35-foot height doesn't appear to block anybody's view in particular, or inhibit the ability for other houses to either, other properties, excuse me, to either be developed or redeveloped. So staff recommended a finding of consistency for that criteria.
A couple things, Jennifer. You've mentioned that the house to the east is taller than what this house will be. Is that, did I understand that right?
Yes.
And how was that permitted? How did that evolve?
That's a good question. It was built in the earlier mid-90s, and I looked at the building permit records and could not find any record about the building height. I do recall that our 28-foot building height was adopted probably in the 2000s. And it may be that there used to be a 35-foot building height in the R3 zone. And it may be that the way it was measured at the time of building permit was different than how we measure today. I'm not sure. They're also asking for a variance from the setback, required setback from the southern property line. And so this is not related to the request about the height. This is only for the placement of the house relative to the southern property line, which is the line, between the property and the right of way. You have four criteria that you need to look at to evaluate this request. Submitted the first criteria is, are there unique or unusual circumstances, a couple reasons why this site is unusual or unique, and it's the combination of a very steeply sloped lot and the distance of the property from the edge of pavement. In other words, the right-of-way width here is much wider than what we typically see for a residential lot. Typically, you have the street, curb, gutter, sidewalk abutting the property line. Here, there's about 40 feet between the street and the property line. So they have quite a span of right-of-way to navigate, if you will, to get onto the property. So that is what they've argued is the unique or unusual circumstance.
Resident here. The only thing I really wanted to address as far as for understanding of you commissioners is that specifically when we're addressing this driveway access point off of Hazel, we are trying to propose something that we are not going to back out onto Hazel. I think that's a really key point in the sense of our design. We have overcome obstacle after obstacle in this design to try to deal with intrinsic slopes because we are farther off the right-of-way line than the normal lots. We're having to overcome big things, but the biggest thing we wanted to provide was a safety net of not backing out onto Hazel, which is to me a busy street. I see it as a potential problem if we don't get this.
And approval. I would also just add a comment that variances are very site specific, and for that reason do not set a precedent. There were other variances approved for properties on this street, but they each had to demonstrate consistency with the four criteria independently of anybody else. So if you approve a variance on this site, that's not to say that that automatically means somebody else will get a variance.